It's your boy Ancient Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew, -1. Unfortunately, Anthony has some work obligations, but we have the lovely Alpha Dean with us tonight. And just as a quick reminder, if you haven't already, be sure to follow us here on Twitch and subscribe to us over on YouTube. It is a great help for our channel, and we really appreciate all the support we have gotten so far. But without further ado, Dean, what are we doing here tonight?
Try not to die. Sorry about that, folks. The minute I started to talk, my voice got caught in my throat. But at any rate, what we're going to do tonight is we're just going to have a nice casual evening. We're going to show you the flexibility of Cypher System once again and how easy it is to adapt just about anything to Cypher. We threw out earlier today people to throw suggestions about what genre or IP or whatever they wanted us to adapt. And, if they thought a white book would go good with it, just throw that out there too. Well, we did get a lot of feedback, a lot of conversation ended up happening about doing Toons, as in Looney Tunes, cartoons, Roger Rabbit, things like that. There were other games in the past that, kind of facilitated this, as I Am MC23, put up Teenagers from Outer Space or Tales of the Floating Vagabond, which were great games in of themselves, and they did replicate that kind of ideology. And so tonight we're just going to show you how we would cypherize it. Now, mind you, both Al and I had things that we had to take care of today, so it's been a busy day. So we did not do any previous prep. So we're going to show you just how this happens in a very organic, very naturalistic manner. Anybody out there in the interwebs who's watching the show with us, feel free to throw things out in the chat. We will do our best to keep observing that, and if it's relevant or whatever, however we can address it, we will. But without further ado, we're going to jump right in. So right off the top of our heads, I would say let's look at the basics of what it is that we would have to do to cypherize a Looney Tunes game. And I figure certain key points we would hit would be the types, because the types would definitely need to be modified. B, cipher use. And I figure cipher use would be thematic. Al and I were talking about it just before stream started, so we were thinking making sure ciphers were thematic. So they would be like, for lack of better terminology, when Bugs Bunny makes a phone call to Acme, or Wile E. Coyote, makes the order from Acme and gets that box. Well, that box would be ciphers, and this way ciphers would not necessarily be as randomized, but they could be. They could still be randomized, because we could always make Acme incompetent, which I would, think would be great. And, if I was going to do my style of Toon game, I would make them very incompetent. So whatever you order, there would be a percentage chance that you didn't get what you ordered, And Al, you want to?
No, I like that idea a lot. And Jack One Spade said in the chat, every time you use one, you gain one. Would keep the Hanna-Barbera, Tex Avery, Max Schlinger. I don't know that last name actually. Vibes. And yeah, so the way I would picture it is because again, Toons is very random, goofy out there, right? And a lot of the time, like we're talking about Bugs Bunny, Wile E. Coyote, or whatever, right? They kind of just reach into their pocket and they pull out whatever, right? A giant mallet, an anvil, what defies the laws of the size of their pocket, defies the laws of physics on how much they can carry, whatever, right? So random ciphers would still work. They reach it, and in this situation, I probably will. So there's two ways you could play it. They could know what's in their pocket, right? Most of the time, the Toons kind of know what they're reaching for, right? But to be a little more goofy, like you said with the incompetent Acme thing, another fun way to do it is they don't know what their cipher is until they go to use it. They pull it out of their pocket, and then you give them their cipher right then and there. And again, you will have to cultivate that list a little bit to make sure that what they're pulling out is kind of related in a way. But I think that would be fun in a Toon, like, very unpredictable game. Yeah.
Something else that I think I would do as far as that when we were talking about the types. Now, as far as Toon characters never die. I mean, they get their head blown around. Daffy Duck gets his beak blown to the back of his head. Elmer Fudd blows himself up with sticks of dynamite over and over. So I'm thinking that things like that, as their pools are reduced, what it does is it will cause the character to become like a static image for a certain amount of time, because that's, how they're standing there like, so instead of it being animated anymore, now it's just like a comic book frame, so as you lose your pools, instead of dropping down the damage track, you get paused versus being able to and the only way to get unpaused would be to do a recovery roll.
So I like that idea a lot, actually. Playing with the damage track in terms of how your animation like fails or whatever. I don't know about pausing because I really don't like when a player loses their turn. Like, pausing implies they can't do anything. But playing with that concept could definitely be a lot of fun. Like, they stutter, their animation might stutter instead of pause, like they're missing frames or something. That could be interesting for showing damage track, like going down to damage track.
Yeah,
I like that GM intrusion idea that Starheart Dragon said, randomly going into song and dance. That would be a great Toon GMI, and GMIs would be a great way to like, now that it's been brought up, that would be a great way to interject Toon into your game, Toon tropes, like song and dance, or see, now I'm blanking on good Toon tropes.
What about a great one would be the eraser comes in.
I see, like a big hand with an eraser comes in and erases something that's vital to the scene. Like, stuff like that would be so good for a Toon game.
He erases something and then the pencil comes in and draws a new thing.
That is, oh man, that needs to be written down somewhere. Like that, someone take notes. That's an excellent GMI for a Toon game. And yeah, breaking fourth wall would be really cool for a Toon game. GMIs could do that as well. There's I feel like, just to talk about the topic as a whole, I feel like a lot of it comes down to theming and framing. Because I don't think a ton of mechanics need to be added or adjusted to really get the Toon feel, so to speak. The only time where I think that would kind of come up is, and this was a big point of topic on the server, which is why I'm bringing it up, is if you were playing a Roger Rabbit style game where there's Toons and real people. That you would need to find some middle ground on how they interact with each other, or the way the laws of the world work with them. I think most likely I would, again, since we're talking about, I'm just gonna go on that tangent. If I were doing a Roger Rabbit style game, it would be like two zones. Like, there'd be the real world and the Toon zone. And in those two places, there's different rules on how things affect you, if that makes sense. I wouldn't know specifically what that idea would be, but that's how I would frame it. There's a real world and a Toon zone, and they just have different rules.
See, now you're getting into some more cool thematics. I can't remember the movie, but what happens, like, if you see a person from the real world get translated into the Toon world and then they become a cartoon, and vice versa. So when if you translate the Toon into the real world, they become more like a CGI type of creature. You know what I'm saying? What movie was that? I remember seeing something like that where they were like doing, oh my god.
You know me, I'm the guy who watches the least amount of stuff.
You know what? I think Juggernaut might have it. Cool World? Yeah, I think it was Cool World that they were doing that.
I don't know.
Cool World was a very interesting anime. That might be our next movie of the week. Won't be able to do it this weekend because it's Father's Day and my wife's taking me out, taking me away for the weekend. So we won't be able to do it this weekend, but next weekend.
Yeah, we definitely got to watch some Toon stuff now that it's been brought up. But yeah, I think when it comes to actual rules changes that might need to happen, it only becomes relevant if there's a mix of the two worlds. If it's a strictly Toon, I think you can run base Cypher no problem. Like, it comes down to a lot of the theming and delivery of the stuff, like, you know, with the ciphers and whatnot.
Well, we were talking too offline earlier. Let's talk about the reflavoring of the horror mode. You know,
that's a pretty good idea. So one thing Dean had mentioned off stream was adjusting the horror mode. You know, to just adjust how often GMIs happen, and again, in a Toon game, makes sense because things gradually, again, depending on the cartoon, they gradually get more and more zany, crazy, right? So, or absurd. So this would instead be absurdity mode, or, you know, zany mode, or whatever. And again, we talked about how GMIs can inject these Toonish tropes, and a mode like that would definitely just intensify it for like the climax of like the episode, so to speak, or whatever. That would definitely be a fun mechanical theme change, and to be used in Toons. I would definitely use that, or try to, because it just seems fun.
So what I was saying earlier too, like, and Al is absolutely right. Most of the mechanics of the game don't need to be changed too much. More than anything, the changes will be all thematic in nature. So, speaking of the types, so, you know, you'd have, you know, I think, like, I would change the adept to the manipulator, and those would be characters like Bugs Bunny, you know, the real savvy, you know, the real savvy characters that, like you said, Bugs Bunny breaks the fourth wall.
What you call it? Jack One Spades broke down some types pretty well in the chat. So, like, you need like a brute like the sheepdog, a trickster like Bugs Bunny, a mastermind like the coyote, like Wile E. Coyote. That's phenomenal flavoring of types right there. Amazing, Jack One Spades. Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah.
Wile E. Coyote, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, I don't know. Wile E. Coyote, yeah, he's a mastermind, but is he? You know, because none of his plans ever work. You know, I would say the Road Runner was more the you know, the Road Runner and Bugs Bunny. They would either be tricksters or the manipulators, like we were saying. Definitely, you know, you have to have the brute. You always gotta have a scrappy character too. You always gotta have somebody who's, you know, like Tasmanian Devil, Scrappy Doo, you know.
I figured that would fall under brute. I guess it depends. Like, it depends on how we say, because I feel like with this, like in cartoons, there's a lot of like archetypes. So the 4 types might not even be enough to cover like all the kind of tropes or, you know, character archetypes you see in Toons.
Or what we could do is make 4 standardized types and then come up with the flavors to, you know, and I think we could do flavors, because, you know, and then flavors would get the characters, you know, to their predisposed idiom. But, you know, you have a baseline. So baseline brute. But then, you know, you'd have your I would probably have a flavor like
there's like a strong brute, crazy brute,
like the dim-witted brute, you know.
Yes.
You know, and you definitely got to have like your baby Huey character, you know, you know, who's just so oblivious that he even defies the laws of physics. That's why he doesn't, like, there's a Looney Tune. I don't know how many of you out there have seen it, but it's one of my favorites. It's called Father's Day. And it always comes on around Father's Day, and they got this one big dog, you know, and he's completely and totally inept. Like, there's a scene where he's like, I am so smart. D-O-G, cat. C-A-T, Rhode Island. It's just, you know, he spells out gunpowder and goes tobacco, and rolls his father a cigarette out of gunpowder. You know, it's just complete. You know.
Oh man.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of fun to be had with the character types and setting those up. But I think having the 4 base types and then flavors that accent them would be probably one of the better ways to go when setting up like a character creation type deal for a game like this. Yeah. Yeah, chat is going off about cartoons.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, and you have so many like interesting tropes, especially when you start looking at Looney Tunes. You know, in the Hanna-Barbera cartoons had specific tropes that were. Go ahead.
The one thing I want to mention is because you brought it up, and I don't know, I was thinking about this the other day, and you might be able to touch on this more because you're older school. But the old school Hanna-Barbera superhero cartoons, why have those not ever been revisited? Like the Herculoids, Space Ghost, Birdman. I know those have been revisited in certain contexts, like Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, and Space Ghost Coast to Coast. But like seeing like a revamped, like an actual good attempt at those feels like it's a missed cash cow, so to speak. Like I feel like those would do so well.
I don't know what the laws are. I do know a few years back they did do a very serious Space Ghost comic book. And it was damn good. It was it was actually pretty serious. They went into Space Ghost backstory. You know, you found out that he was actually a cop. He's a space cop initially, and his wife and daughter, I believe his wife and daughter, kind of like a Punisher deal, they got killed, and that's what led him down the road to becoming Space Ghost. That's why he was so protective of Jason Jaina. You know, he kind of adopted him. He looked at him as his new wards, his children. It was really, really good.
I will say though that Hanna-Barbera does seem to publish comic books. Again, I don't know to what extent. I know Flintstones had like a very serious like comic book run. We're getting kind of off tangent here, but I will say that I would love to see new like the superhero Hanna-Barbera stuff. I would love to see that shit. Like. Cartoons,
yeah.
You revisit so much shit. Why have y'all not revisited that? Like,
and just so you know, I'm gonna throw it out there now. I had thrown out earlier that we were gonna do Thundar, but Anthony definitely wanted to be a part of that discussion, so that's gonna be back. We're going to revisit Thundar. We're gonna actually do Thundar. I've actually already started. I actually started watching all the old cartoons because I have them. And I was watching all of them because I'm really going to adapt. I'm going to use Rust and Redemption and adapt Thundar and set up a one shot, so it's going to be, just letting you guys know. It's going to be some.
My girlfriend mentioned one. She heard us talking and she was mouthing something to me, but she messaged me. I had no idea what she was saying. But Roger Ramjet? I've never heard of that one.
God, Roger Ramjet.
I've never heard of that one. I like the name.
Roger Ramjet was the most inept superhero in the world, and he had a theme song. Oh my God, my brother loved Roger Ramjet. He used to torture us with Roger Ramjet, but Roger Ram, it was great. It was a hilarious character. And it was like in the same vein as like Underdog and
Hong Kong Fooey.
Yeah, he's a terrible hero, but oh, man.
Let's talk about characters got us hella sidetracked. But yeah, the important part here is that there's a lot of character types, archetypes, whatever, tropes to be played with, and putting them in Cypher System is not the hardest thing in the world. Again, flavors make it pretty easy, and having 4 base types based off like kind of the more anchor of the personalities, like Brute, Trickster.
The Trickster. Trickster. I love Brute, Trickster. What did he say?
It was Brute, Trickster, Filibuster for Speaker, which I like Daffy Duck, and then Mastermind for like Wile E. Coyote type.
Right. So and then
flavors.
And so we just do it with flavors. You have those that filibuster.
Yeah, those are fantastic names, like for the types. I love that.
Awesome.
And what's something else we could probably play with, and again, it depends if it's a Toon only game or a Toon real world mashup, whatever. It was mentioned in the chat, and kind of ties into what I'm gonna say. IMMC had mentioned you need a faster way to heal. Because Toons, they don't take no 10 hours to heal. Like, that's not, I mean, it could be played off screen, right? Like, that's their 10-hour recovery roll, right? But like, I feel like the recovery, the 10-minute, the 1 hour, or whatever the actual numbers are, those would need to be like all actions, or like action 1 minute, 2 minute, like.
What I would do is, basically, you wouldn't even need to really worry about you would only worry about recovery rolls within a scene.
Yeah, someone just said in the chat, scene cuts would be like everyone heals.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You would only worry about in that particular scene. So, and I might give them, I might just cut it down to two recovery rolls per scene.
I like that idea that John just said. The pools represent your screen time. That's good. That is excellent good flavoring right there. That is good stuff.
That's what we're saying about Cypher. And you haven't changed. See, people, that's the paradigm shift. That's what I'm talking about. When you start, yes, I said it, go ahead. If you're playing a drinking game, have a drink. Dean said it, it happens. You know it's going to happen. But that's the paradigm shift. That is what makes Cypher so cool. When you shift your mind out of thinking in those static blocks of numbers and what the pools are and what the class or the type is, you break nothing. The game loses no integrity whatsoever. You just put it in, you framed it the way it needed to be framed. This is why games, the older games we were talking about, when people brought up like Teenagers from Outer Space or, Tales of the Floating Vagabond, in Teenagers from Outer Space, they actually had a ability, which was really cool. It was called Relationship with Parents. That was one of your ability scores, and these things affected gameplay. Cypher is all about what you do, about your abilities and your pools and everything. It's all should reflect gameplay. And I think if you embrace that idiom, you can start doing the things that you want to do. See, what'd you say? Oh, that's cool. To get on screen and be a major part of the event in an episode, you spend effort, i.e., Bugs using intellect points to go back and forth with Daffy, saying the thing over and over to make Daffy say the thing Bugs wanted him to say. Classic stuff. See, yeah, great use of an ability,
And again, like Dean was saying, you didn't really change anything about the game. You just changed how it's framed. And again, when it comes to a Toon game, I think it really boils down to mostly that. And but the other thing I was getting at with the healing, we got kind of off track, was I believe Toon should have power shifts. It's usually mentioned when people bring up Toons. Toons are very, powerful, resilient, whatever you want to call it. But that's only due to their like. Go ahead.
I like the idea, but every Toon can only have power shifts. They only get, like I would say, tier 1, you get 2 power shifts, but it can only be in one thing based on your type. Like how you're saying, like with Bugs, because if Bugs is a trickster, but he's savvy, and everything Bugs does is normally through, tricking the other side to do what he wants. That's Bugs' thing. But then if you look at Daffy Duck, especially like Daffy, I'm a coward, but I'm a greedy little coward. And he runs his mouth and manipulates the situation that way. So it's like various ways that we would have to frame it, but these are ideas. And again, these are all things that would have to, of course, be fleshed out. But these are wonderful baselines to work from. So keep them coming.
Yeah, no, I think what you were saying is definitely accurate. And just to tie it all together, how we had the flavors to influence the types, I believe the flavors should have their power shifts listed. Like, that's where you get your power shift list from. Each flavor would have its own power shift list, because, you can't be like a trickster but then have brute power shifts, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be a good way to do like that separation of like what power shifts you get. And of course they wouldn't be called power shifts, they'd be called something else.
Somebody Jack One Space, and I think Daffy would be a character in The Strange. I mean, he changed genres even more than Rock. He was Duck Dodgers, Duck Tracy, Robin Hood.
Yeah, he's definitely a strange character, Daffy.
Now,
Uh,
you know what? Now that could be the flavor. Alternate. We give, that would be a Toon flavor. Alternate identities. you know, so every time, every tier, he gets another identity or something.
Definitely, what you call it, disguise kits or whatever disguise abilities would be prevalent in a Toon game. So that would definitely be like a skill or whatever to include in one of the types or whatever, like to make sure that's an emphasis, because that definitely does happen quite a bit.
And circling back around to kind of bring that point home, we were talking earlier, is like ciphers. Ciphers will definitely be all the zany things like we were talking about, reaching into your pocket, pulling out, a sledgehammer, the hole in the hole that you can splat on the wall and then walk through the hole, but you can deactivate it so the other guy can't get through and stuff like that. So that would definitely be, I think you'd have to curate all of those things as like ciphers throughout the game.
Yeah, what you call it? Godfried said in chat, could the ciphers be set pieces? And I think the way you flavor or make your ciphers and artifacts within the Toon game would really send that point home of like, hey, this is a Toon game. Like Dean was saying, like the little like throw a hole in the wall, you can take it off, like things like that, like should be prevalent and often used as ciphers / artifacts. Yeah. I don't know what hammer space is.
Oh. No, we didn't talk about hammer space. How would I explain hammer space?
Shrug. Oh yeah, no, that's what I was. We did touch on that kind of. I was saying earlier, it's like ciphers. You can just reach into your pocket and pull out anything.
Right.
And yeah, I mean that's not really. You don't need to mechanicalize that or nothing. That's just the thing that Toons do. They reach in their pocket, they pull out big ass shit. It just happens.
What we were saying and what we said about that was that Alan made a good point that we could literally randomize it. So there could be, if you have a cipher limit of, let's say 3, those would be 3 ciphers, but you not necessarily know what's in your pocket until you try to pull it out, and then here's the other cool part about it. What I would do to have fun with it, I would make that a actual, ability roll. When you reach in your pocket and you wanted to pull out a hammer cipher, well, that might be a difficulty 3, but you know what? You're under stress right now, so now it's a difficulty 4. So you got to, but nope, you didn't pull out a hammer. You pulled out the rubber chicken.
You got a lot of shit in that pocket.
Right,
Yes, I dig that concept a lot. If I were to run a Toon game, I would definitely use that in some capacity. Maybe not, because again, it depends on like how erratic we want it. That could be a thing that always happens. Like you reach in your pocket, you got to roll an intellect roll or whatever to see if you pull out the right cipher. Or that could just be a GMI. Like, hey, you reach into your pocket to pull out your hammer cipher, but you actually pulled out a rocket launcher or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
I know you're. Let me address Juggernaut. I know you're new to the channel and us. But just to put it in perspective, I've actually run Thundercats, Silverhawks, Tiger Sharks, G.I. Joe, and Power Rangers, and Scooby-Doo with Cypher System, just so you know. And this is why we're actually on this topic of like the Looney Tunes, because none of us have ever done this one in particular yet, and it was just a lot of conversation on there. But yeah, and I think Al's done Power Rangers as well.
I forget if I actually ran that. I don't remember actually.
But we've done so many adaptations of so many different movies, different concepts. It's really crazy. In the 6 years that Cypher Unlimited has been around, we have done a lot. Done a lot of crazy shit.
But what it really boils down to, at least for this, what you call it, the main, I feel like, sticking point or like most important points for a Toon game was touched on in chat just now. This will make me think about it. GMIs would absolutely be necessary for controlling the narrative flow, and I mentioned that earlier. Like, that's a great way to interject like Toon stuff too, and the theming of your ciphers and artifacts. I think just those two things, using your GMIs well enough, and framing your ciphers and artifacts or whatever, and your abilities in a very cartoony way, is enough to have like you sit down, you're playing a Toon game, and yeah, having the types like specialized and all that, like, I think that's like if you have the time to do that, cool. But if you don't want to sit down and do all that, just GMIs, ciphers, and artifacts would be a great way to tunify your game.
And real quick, Godfrey brought something up, and that would be our bridge. He said Jim Carrey in The Mask. That would be the bridge between the Looney world and the real world, because he was a living cartoon in the real world. So
that's definitely an interesting concept to play with in this regards. Yeah, that's definitely interesting. I feel like he would have two sheets, like a strange character. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. Like, imagine you playing a game where every character could do that. Like, there was 4 masks, like 4 Jim Carreys. Like, that seems like a lot of fun, actually.
Oh man, could you imagine if you actually did that, and if you took the character like The Mask, right? And in the real world, he is, a living cartoon. But if you put him in a cartoon world, he'd be like a straight regular person. That could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun to be had with this setup. And what someone said, I am MC, getting the table to laugh should be a goal and give some reward. Honestly, in a Toon game, I would be doling out XP for funny jokes. Like, you said something funny or you did something funny that was very Toony and like pushed the theme, you get an XP. And I usually do that in my games anyway. Like, I try to encourage people to do that. So I call that discovery of your character, quote unquote, because that's what people, in Cypher System, you get XP for discovery exploration. If you do that within your character, I consider that also discovery and exploration.
That, what, I think we kind of all do something similar, Al, because I give XP. If you entertain me as a GM, if you inspire me as a GM, I give out XP. If you lean into your character and you're playing your character, I mean, I've had some games where people just leaned into the character and they became the character for that session, and it just was so good. I mean, because they were so into it, it brought other people deeper into it. It was so immersive. So absolutely, because Looney Tunes is crazy and hilarity and so on and so forth. I mean, you think about the Animaniacs. That was nothing but, Hanna-Barbera. I mean, that was literally nothing but, Looney Tunes of the 90s.
Yes. I just thought of this, just worth mentioning because we haven't touched on it at all. The flip side of GMI's player intrusions would also be vital in doing. The player should feel super empowered to spend 1 XP to do some goofy ass cartoon shit. Like, that should be standard across a Toons game. Player intrusions should be coming out left and right to break the physics of the world, or the physics of your game, whatever, right? That should definitely be a big part of your game. Players in Toon games definitely do that. It should definitely be highly encouraged. If your players aren't doing that in a Toons game, you should be like, hey, for a XP and a player intrusion, you could do this. Like guide them to it if they're not doing it, because player intrusions would be a fantastic way of injecting Toon. Like,
Jack One Space said, I think the harder part of a Toon game is keeping it going. I think of individual episodes as one shots, but a campaign sounds harder. For Hanna-Barbera, El Kabong, Hercules, I can see it. But for the Merry Melodies, Betty Boop, how to construct a long form. Well, that again would be what it would be. I see what we're talking about on this side of the coin, where we're talking about the Looney Tunes, the Merry Melodies, exactly. I see them as would be a series of one shots versus, it would be a campaign, but it would just be episodic. And that's how I would approach those. I mean, of course, like the Herculoids or Johnny Quest or any of those, that's definitely, and I think that's the difference. I think when we talk about Toon and stuff like that, a uh, it's literally a series of one shots, or it might be a 2 or 3 part, story you wanted to tell. If you wanted to do it like a long form movie or something, like Space Jam or some shit like that. But I don't. I agree. I don't see it being um a long form game. Like you said, even like I am MC23 said, wacky races. But even with wacky races, these races would take place in different places around the world. Or if you want to do a cross country or an around the world race, of course that could be a much longer form, but it still would be episodic in nature, because what are going to be the crazy obstacles, and you know uh what is going to be the story of that particular scene, because you can't have just the race going on.
I think it really depends on how you want to run your games, right? So if you lean more towards that super duper slapstick out there, Looney Tunes, whatever, Bugs Bunny, you're definitely going to be running episodic. There's no real, I mean, you could play an overarching story, but those characters don't super like grow, right? They don't fit in that like thing, right? But then you have cartoons like Adventure Time or like I'm blanking on other ones, but the point being, in those cartoons there is still dramatic over the top action or cartoon zaniness, but it's less so. And it's like, I feel like those cartoons that are a little more on the realistic side, quote unquote realistic, that those are the stories you'd be telling in a long form campaign. And those games, or I guess those series or whatever, they're generally not as over the top goofy as, say, Looney Tunes or whatever, Merry Melodies. And that just really what it boils down to is what kind of cartoon, because you can run like Adventure Time. I wouldn't even call that a Toon game. That's a high fantasy, like post-apocalyptic game. That's not even a Toon game. It's based off a cartoon, but that's not a Toon game. They don't do toony shit. Like Toon, capital T, I guess, would be right. Like Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny, whatever. I think that's a different discussion, quite honestly.
Jordan Hills makes a great point, Al. She said nothing wrong with having an episodic campaign. You can also do something very episodic on the frame of a very loose overarching story with a simple goal that never comes to fruition. And that is absolutely true. And back, I don't know how many of you remember the old TV show, The Outer Limits, but when they brought The Outer Limits back in the 90s and started doing it again, the show was episodic, but there was always an overarching story that came to culmination with all the episodes from that particular season, and it would culminate in the final episode, the season finale. So that is actually a good thing, and you could definitely do it with a Toon style game because of the flexibility in Toons. And you could even have the overarching story not even be revealed until that particular last finale of your campaign, however you wanted to do it. So yes,
there's definitely ways to do it, but if we're talking more of like, because this is happening in the chat now, like there's cartoons and then there's Toons, right? We're talking about Toons, like that goofy over the top, like old school cartoons, right? Yeah. Whereas all these things that are getting mentioned, like Rick and Morty, Gravity Falls, Adventure Time, Archer, like all those are cartoons with great settings, but I wouldn't call those Toons. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Those are animated series versus the episodic nature of a typical Toon. Toons, they were there to entertain. You think about it. The original idea behind cartoons, they were 5-10 minute shorts that showed before movies, before they were ever put on television. So this was supposed to be a self-contained piece of entertainment, and it was over and done. And that's why they were kind of zany and loony in of itself. When you move forward and you start talking about something that's a serial or a series, that's a little bit different. And I think those are built upon, yes, trying to tell a story, And because if you think about it, cartoons were actually shown before the old serials, where people will go to the movies weekly to see like the tales of Captain Marvel. They would go watch. They would go to the movies every week for 12 weeks to watch this one tale unfold. Because guess what? There wasn't televisions and stuff back then. You went to the movie theater.
I'm only laughing because one of my favorite cartoons, F is for Family. This is the only way I know what you're talking about. If I never watched F is, I would have no idea what you're talking about. But in F is for Family, when they go to the drive-in theater, they watch it's called Sleepy Ramirez. They watch a Sleepy Ramirez cartoon, and that's great. That's a real thing. Like that's people actually did that in real life. They actually followed a cartoon series at the fucking movie theater. They had to go to each one. That's bananas. I just thought it was maybe a thing back in the past where they just happen to show cartoons before movies, but it's a thing each week. Is crazy. Damn.
And that's what we're saying. So, So when we're talking about what we're talking about today, for everybody who might be coming in late and so on and so forth, these are the ones that really don't lend themselves to a full-on story, because the characters are just like out there. You tell these episodic one shot tales versus wanting to tell this overarching story. The Thundercats, I mean, come on. They went to Third Earth. They were trying to rebuild their society. They had to face off against the ancient evil of Mum Ra, so on and so forth. That didn't happen in the Animaniacs. I mean, even Animaniacs was episodic inside of an episodic show, which is like totally bananas. I mean, they had other little vignettes. Good feathers. The pigeons that used to crack me up.
They had the little, like, I guess they would be called sketches or whatever, right? Segments. Like they had universes within their universe. Like it's crazy.
You cooling my bird? Hey, you cooling my bird?
That I freaking love Good Feathers. Yeah, I got now sidetracked. Something that was mentioned though, which we could maybe touch on. John Gernot had asked or mentioned creating new tunes, like your own version of a trope that a tune has. Absolutely. I think that's pretty easy, honestly. Like it would just come down to your GM, I guess, what they would allow and not allow. But if you're the GM or you've given free reign, I think it's pretty easy to like just craft a trope of you'd have to make an OC, an original character, and then decide what they want to be like. And I think Cypher lends itself pretty well to that. You could make pretty much any kind of character.
Well, Cypher. Just to give everybody perspective again, like I had said before, running the other games, running like Scooby-Doo and stuff like that. I had the typical Scooby gang there, but I also let people make their own characters to introduce to the Scooby gang and turn the Scooby gang into NPCs. I had people make their own original Silverhawks, their own original Thundercats, their own original Power Rangers. Or we had pre-gens sitting to the side for you to go ahead and play within as well. So it's completely doable because Cypher is flexible enough as long as you have your overarching idea in. Because, like, matter of fact, instead of calling them types, I'd probably call them tropes. Probably call them, or instead of flavors, you pick your tropes. So yes, you could definitely create a unique new character, and you get to interact with Bugs Bunny, you get to hang out with the Tasmanian Devil, I don't see any limitations. I think the only limitations that you really have when it comes within Cypher is the limitations you set upon yourself.
Or the GM.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. But I'm basically referring to the GM, the person who creates the world.
Oh, yeah.
Those are the only limitations that you really have to, worry about. And see, I like this, the chat's going crazy. Now they're doing mashups. They're like, do Supernatural episode with Scooby-Doo.
No, that is a real thing.
I know that, but I'm
Okay,
saying
yeah.
we do our own mashups, where you do,
I
you
mean, if
know,
I was running a cartoon game, I would want people. I would want it to be multiversal, so to speak. Like I would want to see different cartoons from different series interacting for sure. I wouldn't know what I would want to see, but I definitely want to see a crossover episode.
right. Lord and Lady Mills makes a good point. She said, "This is why comedians will always have a set ending punchline be the same as an earlier joke." And she's absolutely right. I mean, you have, or they have a reoccurring statement or something that they do out throughout their whole set. Kevin Hart's good for that. He had "you gonna learn today" in one. He had "really" in another one. So yes, there's a lot of merit to what you're saying, and these are all things that I think when you decide to create something, you kind of just set up a framework, set up the framework of what your Toon world is going to be all about, And if you want it to be zany and over the top, then you know what, you better pick up every trope and manipulate it just a little bit, plug it into an already existing Cypher mechanic or Cypher theme, and you're good to go. Your life is like really easy then, you know. And if you want it to be a little less, a little more serious, then again, you look at, something adjacent, like a prime example would be something like Family Guy or The Simpsons, or South Park for that matter. South Park is very episodic, but it also has an overarching story, and that shit is funny. I mean, I'm sorry, the
Yeah,
Kathleen
so
Kennedy Star Wars episode just hurts me.
that before we get too sidetracked talking about those things, callbacks would be very important in if you were to do a campaign style game, like for a Toon. All those callbacks definitely. I mean, they're important in most campaigns, right? But it's a really big thing in like funny cartoons or whatever, right? Like you'll see a character or a line is mentioned from the first episode in the third episode or something. Like, I don't know. That's just something you see that a lot in cartoons.
Starheart Dragon asked, he said, "What about characters having iconic catchphrases? How would that affect the adventure?" You could have all sorts of things. I mean, you could like Bugs Bunny, "What's up, Doc?" You know what? That could be like a speaker ability where it's an enthrall. Do you ever notice when you say "What's up?" and people are like, "Huh? Did this rabbit just talk to me?" It could be it's so many different ways for you to interpret that. So what I would say is that would be a discussion you would have with your player and the player between player and GM. You come up with your catchphrase, and then you come up what the effect of that catchphrase is. How it operates within the system. Percy?
Yeah, they
Oh, my dog is trying to unplug me.
catchphrase could be the name of an ability you created for your Toon. And I like that idea of the concept of naming like your signature ability or something after your catchphrase. I think that's a cool idea. Oh, that's a good one too, Godfrey. If you overuse your catchphrase, it has negative consequences. That gets old, so to speak. Like,
Right.
and that's a good one. That's a good one.
Work is good anymore.
I like that.
It becomes less effective if you use it too much within a 10-hour period or something. That's cool. Yeah, that is really cool. Oh man. So we beat a dead horse, didn't we?
Yeah, I think what we nailed, and just to give a brief rundown for people who came late, what you really need to hammer home a Toons game is really good theming and delivery. And the easiest way to do that within Cypher System is utilizing GMIs very well, flavoring your ciphers and artifacts. Again, Toons are they pull wacky shit out all the time. Ciphers and artifacts could also be like or I guess ciphers specifically, subtle ciphers. Those could also be Toon tropes that you interject, like floating in midair. Like I ran off a ledge and I use my subtle cipher. I can float for like 10 seconds or something, right? And another big part of making a Toon game hammer home is player intrusions. Player chooses make a big difference in the framing of a Toon game. So if your players are not actively doing them, push them to do so. I think with those three elements, if you push them, will make a really good Toon game.
Right, and remember, and then the other thing is, I think, really, leaning into the idea of baseline archetypes and then tropes as flavors that your characters get. I think that will be the major mechanical aspect, if you will, that should be looked at. And again, every Toon game is going to be different, so every table will probably be different with how it is set up, but it wouldn't keep it from interacting. If you had one set up, in my game, and you want to take it to Al's game, and you just tell him, well, this is what this did, this is what that did. Most GMs are probably going to let you go, oh, that's a cool idea, and implement it. So don't be afraid to inject your own ideas and idioms, into the game, for your GM to use as well. I think the biggest thing with building a Toon game would, really being having that conversation with your table, and doing a little world building that way. Do a great session 0 and do some world building with the players.
Yes.
So,
excellent way to end it. But before we end it, Jack Woodspade has a great question that I think would be fun to answer. What cartoon do you remember unfavorably? We've all ranted about the greats, but what's a bomb you can recall? I have one locked and loaded, and it's relevant to this talk. Do you want to go first, or?
Oh yeah.
So I forget the exact name of it, but the extreme Looney Tunes, the ones where they're like superheroes dressed in all black and only like have little accent colors on their costumes. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do remember.
I did not watch a single episode of that. Just the commercials were enough to put me off. Lunatic Unleashed, I guess is what it's called. Megas XLR was a bomb. It bombed, I guess, through stats, but that was a kick-ass show. But Lunatic Unleashed is my example of a show that was bad.
I absolutely and utterly hate those Teen Titan Go and Thundercats Roar. I absolutely detest them with a passion untold to man. Painful. I don't think I've ever watched an entire episode of either one of those shows.
Damn, I forgot what I was gonna say. A show bombing versus a show being bad are two different things, right? Because Megas XLR, this just made me think of it. Megas XLR bombed, quote unquote, but it was a good show. And same thing goes for Symbionic Titan. That was a crazy good show that got canceled. It bombed. I don't know if it did badly or what, but yeah.
There was like a lot of shows that they tried to capitalize off the success of something else, and like you said, those shows were bad. Those shows, but it seemed like those shows lasted. But then you had the ones like you're talking about, like Mega XLR, what was it?
Symbiotic Titan.
Symbiotic Titans, the Max. Good. All of those cartoons are actually brilliant. They were great shows, but never got the following, never got the tropes. The critics didn't like it, or what have you. And so
I think we could talk. We could have a whole fucking episode about talking about bad cartoons, but I think we hit the nail on the head with Toons, playing Toons within Cypher. Before we get too sidetracked, we can continue this talk on the server about bad cartoons. If you want to continue that discussion, we'll talk on the Discord about bad cartoons, or just cartoons in general.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw this out there to the community. You guys, we like to do shows like this, and every now and then we just have to come up with something to do. Anthony wasn't going to be here tonight, and our regularly scheduled show had to be switched up, and so we had to come up with something quick. You guys, always send me, Al, or Anthony if you have a show idea for anything. Send it to us, because we do keep a list. We keep a running list, and if we can get to it, we will. We like doing these type shows, and sometimes the impromptu shows are some of the best shows we do. So throw stuff to us, and any ideas. And we're not just talking about wanting us to adapt a setting or an IP or anything. Like we mean any topic. If you want us to talk about it, we'll talk about it. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Most definitely. We're always looking for new ideas to discuss on the stream. Do you have anything else you want to say before I do our little spiel, the Anthony sign off? Or did you want to do that?
I was getting ready for you to say something, and I was going to run into it. So
all right, yeah. So then, before you do that, I will say this just as a heads up, because I talked about it last week, 2 weeks ago. But I'm working on my book, The Entropic Isle. I've been working the past 3-4 days super hard on it, and it's getting to a point where it's done-ish. I just got to do a couple more things. The longest thing being the one shot that I have to write. But be on the lookout for a backer kit. I'm going to drop one. The teaser page probably will drop in a week or two. I'm looking for a week. But yeah, when I drop that teaser page, be sure to sign up to know when it's the kit gonna go live, the backer campaign. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Even if it doesn't do well or fund, I'm still gonna release the book on Ko-Fi. So yeah, I'm still very excited about actually getting the book into real life. I just wanted to say that because I've been working on it the past few days.
All right. I'm gonna comment on two things that was dropped into the chat real quick. Number one, Starheart Dragon. You want our take on Takatsu and Magical Girl concept. We actually talked about Magical Girl on another stream because Al was really wanting to do some Magical Girl stuff. But I think when It's Only Magic drops, that might be an episode. I think we might do an episode, with that, because I can see Ken using Claim the Sky and It's Only Magic to do Magical Girl some real justice. Brilliant Loser, you really don't want me to start ranting about Teen Titans Go. That bucket of oh shit. Oh, it's like pig udders, okay? And pigs don't even have udders, and that's just how bad that show was. Okay, that's all I'm giving you for that. And I'll just say this. If you like us and you like what we do, be sure to join our Discord. We have the largest fan-run Discord for all things Mighty Cook Games, with games being run all the time. If not a fan of Discord, join our Facebook group. Not as big there, but we do still have plenty of great discussions over there. Subscribe to us on YouTube. If you miss our Twitch show, we will upload all of our shows to YouTube afterward. We've already crested over 1,000 subscribers, and we're trying to grow that platform just as much. And hey, if those things aren't for you, you know what? You can give us a little donation on Ko-fi. Our videos will always be free, but things like Ko-fi help us with things, our costs for, various things that we have to do, and bringing you more and more content like our giveaways and so on and so forth. And if that's not for you, you can always buy some merch, that my dog is hiding. My Cypher Unlimited shirt, we're going to have new CypherCon shirts coming up for this year's CypherCon. We might even put the old ones up, for sale during CypherCon, we don't know. We might do that too. But at any rate, all that being said, we love you guys.
Yep, thank you guys so much for coming by, talking about Toons. And yeah, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to people maybe running Toon games soon, because it definitely seems like a point of interest. A lot of people were talking about it on the server, and hopefully this video helped solidify some ideas in that regard. But yeah, as usual, thank you again, and from us at the CU, we will see you later.